I think it also came around the time of my kids were all out of the house
Hmm.
and I wasn't working on a show. And so the things that were identifying me and giving me purpose in the world were no longer there. And so you're in this sort of floaty place where you're not anchored to a job or your kids or whatever. And so it's like, who am I in the world? What's my purpose here? And that kind of slight, sort of free floating anxiety that you're existing in as like, who am I now? Can cause you to want to just have drinks and then you don't think about it. You have a good laugh at lunch or, whatever, and then you fall asleep. You don't have to think about it. And so as an actor, we're always looking at intentions and looking at behavior. That's what you do as an actor. You observe it in other people. You observe what's happening on the page when you're reading a script and how they're acting and not just the lines, but what's going on underneath. And so I've always done that with myself also. It's just a way of thinking in the world and viewing the world. So I looked at that a lot and I just thought, I think I want to stop drinking.
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Teri Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, hello. Today I am so excited to have the opportunity to share this beautiful conversation with you that I had with the one and only Patricia Heaton. Yes, that Patricia Heaton, the co-star of Everybody Loves Raymond, who is now also almost 8 years alcohol-free. And just like many of us, a woman in midlife who is changing her relationship with alcohol. So beyond her incredible career, Patty and her husband, David Hunt, have now also created a beautiful offering in the alcohol-free space with their wine, Solubrae. And this conversation is so natural and meaningful. Patricia really opens up about her own transformation from empty nest to drinking more than she wanted to recognizing it was time for a change. And out of that beautiful transformation, comes this rich offering that you too can sample with a special discount to our Sober Edge members and audience. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. I think you're going to see a side of Patty that you didn't know before. Well, hey everyone, it's Teri back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and I am delighted to have someone that you might be quite familiar with. I have the one and only Patricia Heaton here in our podcast visiting the Sober Edge this afternoon, and she's given me permission to call her Patty. So Patty, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and Patty and I are connected because we have a couple things in common. One being women in their second, or shall we say third act,
Mhm. Yeah.
and both being alcohol free.
Yeah. Yes. It'll be for me 8 years in July.
Well, congratulations. I
Thank
am
you.
about 10 and a half years now.
Wow.
And yes, it seems like a long time since I made that decision. How about for you?
It's flown by so quickly that I cannot believe it's going to be 8 years since I stopped drinking, which is interesting. What was there one incident that compelled you to make that decision, or was it just an overall something you were noticing?
Yeah, I think it was a long time coming. I had that a small, still voice that would tap me on the shoulder and remind me that maybe I could do better and maybe I was not living up to my potential. And it
Mm.
went on for a long time. And then there was sort of a series of where the voice got a little louder. And it wasn't really any incidents, but it was more of the recognition that it was time. And so
Mm.
when I made that decision, it was scary, but it was a forever decision. And I didn't look back.
Did you avail yourself of like groups, like 12 step, or did you just do it on your own?
Yeah, so I think I was very nervous about going to a 12-step program. I live in a small town, and of course I had a lot of preconceived ideas and stigma around what it would look like to go
Mm.
to a 12-step meeting. And
Hmm.
so I did not. I told my husband I'm going to stop drinking and I might have to go to meetings. And it sounds so ridiculous and silly now because I'm no longer afraid of going to meetings. But
Right.
I didn't actually have to do that journey. I was able to, start moving towards something new, and that changed a lot of things for me.
Would you consider yourself an alcoholic, or maybe you're just involved in alcohol abuse?
Yeah, so, I actually now coach in the alcohol-free world, and so we've kind of co-opted different language around that to say
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah, to say that, we recognize alcohol use disorder as the
Mm.
condition that it is. And so we love the term alcohol free as a choice of empowerment versus feeling sort of trapped into the maybe the disease model or the
Yeah.
idea that that you're broken in some way.
Oh, interesting. And and has that is there any data on whether, or just maybe from people's personal experience, that that makes a difference in how they are able to quit when
I
they
think
look at it from a different viewpoint?
Yeah, I think that the good news is that we have more language around how we might move into the conversation of, am I drinking too much? What would life
Mhm.
look by if I
Mhm.
drank look like if I drank less or not at all? And I
Okay.
think the people that I work with, and I've been coaching in the alcohol free space for about 6.5 years, and so the people that I work with often are sort of put off by the idea of a label or feel
Mm.
some shame to associate with the term alcoholic. And this gives them just another opportunity to explore without maybe that stigma.
Right, interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And how about you? Did you get support? Did you have a traditional pathway to freedom?
No, I think, similar to you, I was just feeling like I wanted to quit because I noticed I was thinking about alcohol a lot. If I got up in the morning, I would think, do I have a lunch today where I could start drinking Prosecco at noon?
Mhm.
That kind of thing. Or I would be cooking dinner for my husband and I, and he doesn't drink, never has really. And I would drink some wine while I was cooking, drink while we were eating, drink while I was cleaning up, and then drink while we were watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, as you do.
Mhm.
And and then whatever show we would watch. And then I would look at the bottle, and be empty.
Yeah.
It's just me. And I'm small. I'm tiny. And I thought, wow, I can't believe I drank all that.
Mhm.
And then, there's the age factor where you find you're not recovering well. It takes longer. You can waste a whole day. If you have cocktails at lunch or wine at lunch, then you're done by 3 o'clock. You just want to collapse, which as you get older, time becomes very precious. And you think, oh my gosh, I just wasted a whole half a day.
Yes.
And I don't ever want to waste a day at this point. Right.
Mhm.
So there was that. And I think it also came around the time of my kids were all out of the house
Mhm.
and I wasn't working on a show. And so the things that were identifying me and giving me purpose in the world were no longer there. And so you're in this sort of floaty place where you're not anchored to a job or your kids or whatever. And so it's like, who am I in the world? What's my purpose here? And that kind of slight, sort of free floating anxiety that you're existing in as like, who am I now? Can cause you to want to just have drinks and then you don't think about it. You have a good laugh at lunch or, whatever, and then you fall asleep. You don't have to think about it. And so as an actor, we're always looking at intentions and looking at behavior. That's what you do as an actor. You observe it in other people. You observe what's happening on the page when you're reading a script and how they're acting and not just the lines, but what's going on underneath. And so I've always done that with myself also. It's just a way of thinking in the world and viewing the world. So I looked at that a lot and I just thought, I think I want to stop drinking, but I would never be able to because I love Maker's Mark bourbon old fashions and vodka and tonics. And I'm a Christian, Catholic variety. So I also have like a lot of prayer conversations with God. And I just remember just cleaning up around the house and just having this conversation saying, God, I think I want to quit drinking. In fact, I'm pretty sure I want to quit drinking. I will never be able to do it. I think you would like me to quit drinking. So if you want to, and I'm willing, then go ahead and take it away. I just didn't know what that meant or how it was going to look or if it would happen. I just knew and this is, I've never, well, I've been to a friend's 12-step meeting just years ago to support her. But it was that thing of like, I'm powerless to do anything with this. So you're going to have to do it. That didn't know how that would happen. In fact, the next day, my son invited me and a couple other brothers to come to dinner at his house with his buddies. And so I picked up a few bottles of wine and we all went to dinner. And again, cooking while we were making the food, cooking while we were eating, cooking while we were cleaning up, and cooking while we were all sitting at this table playing a board game. This is literally like 2 days later after I would kind of had that conversation with God. And we were all laughing and having a great time. I felt fine because it was just like filling my glass over a space of 5 hours, I would say. And red wine, topping up, topping up, topping up, topping up. Felt fine because it was very in a kind of a moderated way through these hours. And in the middle of sitting at the table with all these young men, I was trying to make a joke and I said, in our family, it's a tradition. And I could not say the word tradition. I couldn't pronounce it. And I tried 2 more times to say it and I couldn't get it out. And my youngest son at the end of the table goes, "Oh, that's really great, Mom. You can't even talk." I was so embarrassed and humiliated and mystified because I felt fine. I was not slurring my words. I was making just this 1 nanosecond of a moment. So, first of all, I felt completely embarrassed. On top of that, I thought to myself, even if I feel fine, alcohol is doing something to my brain, even though I feel fine. And the next day, I was having lunch with a friend who'd been sober, or breakfast with a friend who had been sober for a very long time. And I said, "Well, you're the first person I'm telling. This is my first day of not drinking again." And she was so taken aback. She was just like, "Well, I was just with you last week and you were drinking." She said, "What happened?" I told her the story. And it just impacted me. And so much that I was able to just stop.
Mhm.
So I wasn't going to meetings. I just stopped because it really showed me that there was problems on a couple levels here that even what you think you're drinking moderately could still be affecting you. And after I went through that experience, I started looking into women of a certain age and their alcohol use. And it turns out that women who've been moderate drinkers all their lives often become alcoholics in their 50s and 60s.
Mhm.
And I think it's for a lot of the reasons, we just discussed, which is your life changes, who's your identity as you get older, what's your purpose, and also your body isn't able to handle it as well after menopause. So that was very interesting to me when I saw that. And thankfully, it was before the pandemic.
Yes, I saw that
Oh
too.
my goodness, because if I was still drinking during the pandemic, that would have been disastrous. True, I would have really have been starting at noon.
Mm, yeah.
So I'm so grateful and thankful that God sort of like orchestrated that little tiny event, but he knew exactly what I needed to stop me. And I would say there was a little bit of a struggle when I would go out to dinner and everybody's ordering cocktails
Mhm.
and it would come to me. And it's just almost a Pavlovian response that you have. You just automatically order because that's what you've been doing all your adult life. And that's what everybody else is doing. And we were in the era of mixologists. So all these cool drinks are happening and different vodkas and tequilas and all kinds of, really fun stuff. And that's when you're opting out. It's a little difficult. But God bless Peter Boyle, who played my father-in-law on Everybody Loves Raymond, and he had been sober for many, many years.
Ah,
And we used to go out after tape night to a bar. Everybody, the writers, the actors, everybody would go out to just kind of, because you're in this very heightened state after you've finished taping in front of a live audience, and so everybody goes out to kind of celebrate and also to like decompress. And I said to Peter, "How can you, after such a, you know, the height of taping something, how can you resist when you go out with everybody to not have a drink?" And he said, "Well, I just picture having that first drink and then leading into a second and to a third, and I just walk it through in my mind where I would end up." And that show was 30 years ago. I've never forgotten that he said that to me, even though I was drinking all through that time. I never drank uh when I had work. And
mhm.
thankfully I was working for many, many years, pretty
Yes.
straight through. So that was and also having children. So that, helped me maintain a certain amount of um discipline. But that's what I would do. I would just think about it and let the impulse pass. And once it passed, then you could just relax. And I've always thought of myself as a social person. I am a social person. But when I stopped, I realized there was a certain kind of tension that would rise up in getting ready to go out in a social gathering. And I don't think I'd ever recognized that before. So that even if you're a social person, there's just a certain kind of heightened behavior that we all have when we're social of chatting and talking and joking and laughing and catching up with people and telling our stories and things like that. It takes a certain amount of psychic energy to do that. And so I
Yeah.
think a lot of that social lubrication is about taking the little tension of that way of being socially that's a little different from our everyday lives. And that was interesting to recognize. So, and I have had the occasional little sip of a drink or something here and there if it's my husband's birthday, it's a Christmas toast or something like that. So I would not consider myself an alcoholic, but I would have easily gotten there if I had not stopped. I could see that.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing all of that. I appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty, and I think what's so, amazing is that, alcohol is addictive to humans, and we have changes in our brain and our physiology changes, like you said. And it doesn't matter if you're a famous actress or you're, a woman who is an empty nester and facing menopause and thinking, why am I drinking so much? The
Yeah.
story that you shared is so similar to so many of my audience here. And there's actually a term called, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called gray area drinking where
Oh, what's that?
Well, it's exactly what you identified. It's not that we hit at rock bottom or we're driving and having a DUI or we're,
Mhm.
stumbling or, you know, um, having severe consequences, but we find ourselves drinking more and enjoying it less, having
Mm.
more impact as we get older, questioning the amount we're drinking, and wondering why it's taking up so much of our mental headspace, like you
Mm.
mentioned.
Yes, that's so interesting. Yes,
And
well, and my brother was an alcoholic,
Mhm.
and, I had quit drinking before I didn't quit drinking because of him, because I'm just a completely separate, um, person, and my issues were separate. Um, but I saw how it could really take your life. That was just interesting. I don't know that I would have ever gotten to the point that he was, but I saw it in my family, and it's sort of in the culture where I come from, Cleveland,
Mm.
west side of Cleveland, sort of Irish, Polish, Italian, working and not all working class, but Um, just the long winters and tailgate parties and that whole kind of thing. Same thing when I went to Ohio State University. The Big Ten schools have a big drinking culture too. So it was kind of all baked in a lot
Oh, yeah.
for me.
It's pretty amazing when you're on the other side of it to recognize how once alcohol is in the picture, we start using alcohol for all the things. I
Yeah.
remember when I thought, why are we drinking? Why are people having mimosas at a baby shower? Certainly the baby doesn't drink and the mom to be isn't drinking. Why is this
Right.
a part of our culture? But we've gotten to that place with alcohol. And I think we're moving a little in the other direction, but we've got
Yes.
we certainly had that place where it felt like every occasion was a reason to drink, and advertising and the idea of unwinding or stress relief or boredom or having more fun was always a part of why we chose to have a drink.
Well, and more so for women, I think the alcohol industry was mostly aimed at men for so many years. And then they realized there was 50% of the population that they were not benefiting from. And so you got rosé all day and 5 o'clock somewhere and
Mommy wine
skinny
culture.
mommy wine culture, skinny vodka, all that stuff started targeting women. And then it gets on social media and everybody's having a great time. And listen, that would be me. I mean, I get it. And to be honest with you, when I was working and raising my kids, I don't know that I would have been able to do it without knowing I could have a cocktail on a Friday night or a glass of wine. I mean, it's a lot, on your plate. And unless you're an incredibly strict, like you're deep into being able to meditate your stress away, which most of us are not,
Mhm.
I don't know how else I would have function. I mean, I find that I'm crying. Oh, my jaw's always like that. "Ah." So I still have to work on that aspect of it, um, because I think we do have stress in our lives, and so we have to figure that part out.
Yes.
Um, and magnesium is great for that. Magnesium helps.
Yeah.
That's a good one for sleep. Um, but that's a part of it, and, it was pushed on women and, um, marketing wise,
Mhm.
and, it can be fun. I mean, it was fun, and when we were all had kids in elementary school, the moms, like, at least once a month would get together on a Friday night or Saturday night at somebody's house. It was just all the moms, and everybody would be drinking wine and smoking cigarettes. Like, that was because we
Yeah.
were so stressed, right? We
Yeah.
just loved getting together and just you could feel your body just relax when we would all get together and start drinking and than smoking cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about how we gave alcohol that job, and I think that's why it starts taking up more space, headspace. At least for me,
Yes.
alcohol. We gave it one job in the beginning, maybe to socialize or feel grown up or be able to be at a party easily, and then suddenly we started giving it more and more jobs until it became, at least for me, and you mentioned as well, this idea that why am I thinking about drinking so much, even if I'm not
Yes.
drinking?
Yes. Yes. I mean, there was one time when I'd gotten all the kids to bed so I could pour myself a glass of red wine. And then my third son called down for me to come up. And so I went up and I leaned over him and I said, "What do you need, Joe?" And he goes, "Mom, you smell like communion."
Oh, a good Catholic boy, he knows.
I was like, "Oh." I said, "Yes, honey. Every night after I put you to bed, I'd pray for you down there with my communion wine." Um, so, I don't know how I would have done it, but it's really nice to me not be drinking. And honestly, I can't imagine going back to it, which
No.
I never ever. I have a lot of friends who've been sober, girlfriends who've been sober for a very long time, and I had no compunction drinking around them, and they didn't care either. But I just never imagined I would be one of them. I
Ah,
couldn't imagine it, and here I'm one of them.
and God imagined it for you with that
Yeah.
little tap on the shoulder and
Yes,
that
yes,
reminder. And
yes.
so we talked about the changing culture around alcohol, and you and your husband are becoming part of that because you have a new product and offering for well, men and women, but
Mhm.
perhaps maybe even more exciting for women to have this alcohol-free wine. Will you tell us about that?
Yes, so, we developed this we started actually before the pandemic, and then everything kind of stopped, and then we took it back up again in the last year or 2, and I think that also was a blessing because I think the timing is better now. We might have been a little too early before the pandemic,
Yes.
and because also everybody was drinking,
Mhm.
and it was only after the pandemic that people started seeing, "Oh, I think this has become an issue." So it's called Solubrae, 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 and that name comes from the word salubrious, which means health giving.
Yeah.
And we've created 2 varietals, a white and a rosé, and we go up to Sonoma and we actually purchase wine and we put it through a process where the alcohol is centrifugally removed, the alcohol molecules. And so it's wine, um, but the alcohol has been taken out. We do make a few adjustments with the acidity and the tannins in it. And I found that it's really the best product out there because I tried a lot of these other ones and they were either grape juice
Mhm.
or they were thin and flat or too sweet,
Mhm.
and really didn't seem to bear any relationship to wine. And, it's not that I don't think there's anything wrong with drinking water at a party. It's totally fine. But when you're drinking water all day and you wanna go out, it's actually nice to have something different that pairs with your meal if you go out to a restaurant or even at a party. And, um So it's really more about that than it is about I want to fit in. You don't have to fit in, but it's just a nice change to have something that's also very low in sugar. A lot of these mocktails that you can get now because so many restaurants are now have on their menu NA cocktails and NA wines. Not as many wines, but a lot of cocktails. They're very sugary. They're very high in calories. And part of that too, that sugar, especially as you get older, is not great for you. It
Mm.
never is, but it really, as you get older, it's not great for your skin, for your cholesterol, for your all of that stuff. So, Salubre only has 35 calories a glass and 4 grams of sugar. And we have a Daylight, which is our white. They're both Pinot Grigio based wines. So we have Daylight, which is the white, and Sundown, which is the rosé. And we're working on more varietals. Red is a little harder to adjust.
Mhm.
because it's such a robust flavor. So to kind of maintain that is a little tricky, but we're working on it.
I
And
love
we
it.
have gotten such rave reviews. I mean, we introduced it only a few weeks ago at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, and we were the only NA wine there. And people could not believe that it didn't have alcohol in it. So that was really rewarding for us, this enormous response we've gotten for it. So we're in the midst of finding our distributors. So right now you can get it at solubrae.com. And actually, your listeners, if they put in um, Stober 20, you can get 20, your listeners can get 20% off.
Yes, thank you. And your assistant sent me 2 bottles. So we opened, Patty, we opened the rosé yesterday for Easter with
Oh,
my mother and my daughter, who is a certified sommelier, and my other adult children were there, and my husband, of course. And it was so
yeah.
fun to have your wine or de-alcoholized wine at our Easter brunch. So thank you
Oh,
for that. It was
fantastic. Was it
delicious.
chilled? Was it properly
Oh,
chilled?
yes. Oh,
Okay,
yes.
great.
Yes, and we drank
Oh,
it in a
good.
pretty glass, so
Oh, good.
of course.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and my
Well,
daughter, who is, in the wine industry, she has been, so I stopped drinking around the time that she was starting to, work for a company, out here in California that also it's actually Texas-based now, and as a
mhm,
wine distributor, and so she started bringing in the NA options, based on my questions about, "Well, what do you guys have? What's your portfolio look like?" And so they have now, between the, ready-to-drink cans of different
mhm.
options and wine, I think they have 72 SKUs or something in their
Oh,
product
wow.
line.
Oh,
And so
fantastic.
yeah, so she has become the kinda go-to person for the NA wine. So I've sampled a lot, and I must say yours are very special because they do, remind you, and particularly, I was so impressed with the white, the daylight, the
Mhm.
fragrance of it. It's like, "Oh,
Yes.
I remember
Yes, well,
this fragrance."
it has a nose, so
Mhm.
and it also has a mouth feel to it, which
Yes.
so many don't.
Yes,
So,
and you
well,
described it
thank you.
as on the label, it says, something was salty, and I asked my
Yeah,
daughter, I was like, "What is this? I've never seen this, I don't think, on a label," and she says, "Well, sometimes we'll think of it as, like, mineral flavor,"
right.
and so it
Yes.
has that. If you think of, like, if you go to Europe and that you have mineral water, it tastes very different than the mineral water we have here, right?
Right.
And it's got that salty,
Yes.
that just that
Minerally
flavor, yeah.
vibe.
So
Yeah.
she said, and I said, "Oh, you're right, that's exactly what I'm tasting." So well done.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we're really excited about it. And we're so thrilled that it's getting that kind of response everywhere we go. And we some friends took us to this incredible tasting menu at Emeril Lagasse's restaurant in New Orleans.
Mm.
And it's obviously paired with wines, but because they have so many customers that don't drink anymore, they've created a pairing with different teas,
Mm.
and cold ones and bubbly ones and some that have lavender or rosemary. I mean, it's just this really incredible selection of teas to go with each of the courses. And I thought even this 2 Michelin star restaurant is doing these non-alcohol pairings. So I think we really hit at the right time, because we're finding that so many restaurants and high-end restaurants are looking for that non-alcohol product.
And I think the other thing that we sort of touched on is the idea of having this beautiful ritual and this experience, because just because we choose not to have alcohol doesn't mean that we should get a paper cup with tap water.
Right.
We are also
Right.
deserving of something delicious and enhances the experience. And we sometimes forget we're not as well versed in the idea of rituals here in the United States, maybe because
Mhm.
we're a melting pot as some other countries. But I see with, the rituals that come with shaking a cocktail or, sniffing the cork and letting the wine breathe or decanting wine. Some of that is the part that people miss and can keep us connected to the idea of still drinking when alcohol is no longer really serving us or, we're having issues with how we're metabolizing it. And so I love
Yes.
these new NA options.
Yeah, I agree, and I get sort of, um, wistful when there's a beautiful sunset and you wanna just sit on the porch with your drink, and so it's really nice to have Solubrae to do that with, because yeah, a glass of water is just not exactly the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always remind people when they struggle with that experience. Sometimes my clients will say, "Well, I'm going to be in Italy this summer and I just can't imagine,
Yes.
not tasting the wine." And I said, "Okay, let's do a little experiment, a little thought experiment." I said, "Imagine you're sitting out on the terrace and you're overlooking the view and the vineyards and the little wizened old winemaker comes up and he's got a special bottle he wants to pour for you. And you look across at your partner and you're feeling the warm air and you're just in the moment and the sun is
Mm.
starting to set and you just can't believe you're there. And he comes out and he pours you this glass of something and you toast and you're like, that experience. And I say, now imagine you somehow get a hold of this special vintage that he poured you and you order it to your home in, I don't know, where did you say you were born?
Mhm.
In Ohio?
Yeah.
You order
Okay,
it to your
yeah.
home in your little town in Ohio, and it comes to your porch, and you go into your closet, and you close the door, and you uncork that bottle. Glug, 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 glug. I said, "Was it really the wine that created that
Mm.
experience, or was it everything else?"
Oh, interesting. Yes, 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 yes. Because we always associate alcohol with those moments. It's ingrained in us. But
Mhm.
you're absolutely right.
He
It's
could
you
come and
still
pour
have the
you a
experience.
glass of Solubrae, or
Yeah.
he could give you an olive tasting of his olive oil, and you'd say, "Wow, I had such an incredible experience." And we give alcohol so much credit, but the reality is when we separate those out, we have access to all of that.
Yes, that's right. That's such a good analogy. That's such a good analogy. I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep that in mind. Yeah.
And no one has to miss out. In fact, we can enhance the experience because we're not having that feeling where we sort of lost the plot, we're
Mhm.
present, we're fully present. We're not having that afternoon wine tasting experience and then feeling sleepy. We get to go and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes, 100%. And that really fits in with us now going out to dinner by 6 o'clock. That's our other thing.
Yes, yes.
Then we can really enjoy the rest of the evening and the next day because we haven't stayed out late. I mean, all the cliches are true. When you'll go into a restaurant early and it's all older people, and I realize I'm one of them.
Yes.
The upside to that is you can get into any restaurant. You can get into the hottest restaurant if your reservation's at 5:30.
I love it. I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
there are certain perks.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you because, predominantly the women that listen to the Sober Edge and that I coach, they're in their 50s and 60s, and they're
Mhm.
really looking at that second act, or they're kind of reinventing themselves, and
Mm.
the identity of being able to, instead of, when my grandmother, she was, at 60, she was a little old lady who only drove her car to church on
Mm.
Sundays. She
Okay.
wore orthopedic shoes and a wig. And that was my impression of a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
And so now things have changed so much. And so you have been this vibrant actress that we brought into our home, we all fell in love
Mhm.
with, and yet you have continued to grow and evolve. You had a cooking show for a while.
Mhm, mhm,
Now you're a winemaker. Like,
mhm.
how do you use this vibrancy that you have to continually explore life and have the second and third act?
Well, it's interesting because the wine, Solubrae, was really there to fill a need that was missing in my life, but I have found I absolutely adore everything about making it, marketing it. Sh- I I love going to Sonoma and getting the taste just right. I love working with our graphic designers to we went through a lot of iterations of what we want the label to look like. Um, Creating the website, creating the ads, going to food festivals and seeing how people respond. I love all of that. Like, and I realized I love business. I love business.
Mm.
And that's such a wonderful thing to be able to discover at my age that you can create this new thing. I wrote a book called Your Second Act. And it really is about people who have had to pivot because of circumstances mostly.
Mhm.
Um, and it was sort of my story of at that time, I was doing a lot of work and continue to with World Vision, which is a very large NGO, charitable organization, largest provider of clean water in the world. And so I was pivoting a lot into that, traveling to a lot of different countries with them. And now with Solubrae, I found that I'm really enjoying being in this space and being deeply in the food space, the wine and food space. It's all together. So many chefs we talk to, big, well known chefs, have stop drinking and they recognize the problem in that industry. It's alcohol and drugs, especially for the younger people, because it's such an intensive pressure cooker in a kitchen when you're working at a restaurant. So I have just really enjoyed it. And it's so wonderful to find something you really enjoy the way I've enjoyed acting for so many years. And the fact is, as you get older, as an actress in particular, the number of opportunities decrease. There's a number of incredible actresses in my age category. And so when a role comes up for that category, there's you know 8 to 10 other women that people are going to first before they come to me. And I'm also known just mostly for comedy.
Mm.
So and you realize, oh, I'm getting offered the role of playing the mother-in-law, the grandmother, that kind of thing. So that's a big adjustment. And so I'm not necessarily always getting a satisfaction from that part of my life, from that artistic part of my life. And s- I still love it. And always, what great thing about it being an actor, you don't have to ever retire because
Right.
there's always parts. And that's another thing about not drinking is preserving your ability to memorize, preserving how you look,
Mm.
um, your health, being able to shoot 12 hours a day, being able to remember your lines, hit your marks, all that stuff. But also, uh, it's great when you see the thing that's been your passion for most of your life kind of not be as available to you as you would like, to have something that comes in that really sparks a different side of your creativity, and and you find it something that you really enjoy. Because unlike a lot of work in the entertainment industry, you get to see immediate results when you're creating a product and you control it, which is not the way it is in the
Yeah.
entertainment industry. So, so that's really wonderful, and I'm really loving it. I'm a little bit surprised how much I'm loving doing it, but we're so proud of the product, and it's so good, and it's so fulfilling to see how much people enjoy it. So I feel very blessed that it's so far working out really well.
I love it. Well, it's in that creative energy
Yes,
and knowing that you are producing something that's bringing pleasure and joy and connection.
yes,
You know,
and that's
people used
healthy.
yeah. People used to sit down and watch Everybody Loves Raymond, and they would feel connected and they would laugh and they would have
Yes,
conversation. Now they can sit down and toast and feel that connection and joy and laughter. And what a beautiful thing to just see that through line in your life. Such a
yes,
gift.
it's taken a really long time, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of capital. But we're really excited about it. But I feel like for all your listeners, especially all of the ones that are in our sort of time of life. Um, I think the goal is to feel like we have purpose and we're contributing to our families and our communities and to the wider world. And I think that's the most important thing. Whether you now have time because you're you're single again for whatever reason, or you're not working now because you're retired or whatever, to have purpose in life in your community, whether it's volunteering, working for a nonprofit or something like that, where you can also discover your other gifts and that are beneficial to the world, to your community.
Mhm. Yes, this conversation is reminding me of a recent conversation I had with two friends. One is a coach, one is a social worker, and they wrote a book. And the premise of the book is landing on your North Star, and it really
Oh.
starts with getting to your core values. And one of my guests said, she said, well, she used to be an actress, and she said at some point I realized I wasn't, as much as I loved acting, it wasn't going to take me all the way there. And so I thought, well,
Hmm.
what are the values that I relate to that are connected? And she said it was connection and contribution. And so
Mm.
she became first a Reiki master, so an energy
Oh,
healer, and then a coach. And she said, I still have that connection and that contribution. And I think that's such a lovely way to consider how we grow into our later years is
yes.
where are we still connected to those core values, whether it's generosity or family or contribution, whatever that looks like, that
Yes.
doesn't go away because our children left home or our job changed.
Right. 100%. And it doesn't have to be something that makes money. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to lean in, and it doesn't have to be all that. It just needs to have that. We need to have that connection between whatever gifts God has given us, and be open to using that in the world.
Mhm. Yes, I love that. Yes, so important, and that really is going to serve us well in whatever we do next.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'll ever retire. I mean, I'm having the time of my life coaching people to help
Yes.
them, move alcohol out of the way and discover who they really are. Like, for example, Patty, today I'm gonna do a coaching session later this afternoon, and it's all about the power of play. And
Oh,
thinking
tell me
about
about that.
just thinking about where alcohol, kinda gets in the way of the way we used to play, and
Mm.
how when alcohol's out of the way, tapping into those styles of play, and it's based on the work of Stuart Brown, who is one of the, thought leaders around play and the power of
Okay.
play. But thinking about, you can still be, connected to that carefree part of yourself, whether your style of play is exploring or directing, throwing fabulous parties, the creative player who my husband's now woodworking. He never did anything with wood before retirement. And now he's this creative genius, And so
Wow.
when
I see
alcohol
I see a little, like, birdhouse behind you. Did he make
Yes,
that?
yes. Well, I'll have to
Okay.
show you here's an example. So he makes these little vases out of scrap wood.
Oh my goodness, that's
And
gorgeous.
so this is just one example. He just has fun. And we forget when alcohol is part of our daily life and we're thinking about, can I go to lunch and have fun and order a
Yes.
glass of wine? And instead, now everything is on the table, all is available. We can explore. I had a gentleman the other day saying, I got my bike out and I forgot how carefree I felt when I would ride my bike just
Oh,
through the streets and
yeah.
thinking, what am I going to do with my evening hours now that I'm not, drinking early in the evening, kind of passing out, and
Yes.
wasting time. And so he's out riding his bike like a
That's so
teenager.
great. Yeah, and, you know, uh, one of the things I realized, and this is why it's, beneficial to be an actor in many ways, is because the idea of sort of having attention, of not knowing who you are now, what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of the drinking was about getting that tension to go away temporarily.
Mhm.
And I just thought, as an actor, all these feelings are valuable. I should really be leaning into the discomfort and owning the discomfort. So the discomfort no longer owns you. You own it. You allow it to come to you and experience it because it's not who you are. It's just something you're feeling.
Mhm.
And it's not defining you. It's just an experience that you're having. And particularly as an actor, it's important to have those experiences fully because it just gives you more arrows in your quiver, more tools in your toolbox as an actor that you know what that feels like now. And I think in our life, to have empathy for ourselves and for others, we need to experience our feelings. And if you keep trying to push it away, you'll never resolve the feeling. You have to feel it and see what it's doing to you and see how it's making you perceive things and think about things. And it's actually freeing when you can invite those feelings in instead of trying to push them away because you own it now and you're in control of it. And even when my brother ended up passing away from the alcohol, and I remember thinking, this time I'm going to grieve because when I was 12, my mother died very suddenly. And it was in the 70s, Irish Catholic, west side of Cleveland. There's no grief groups for kids, or we're not going to see a therapist. That just wasn't part of the culture. And I just really sat on the grief, partially because I didn't want my dad to feel worse than he did. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't want him to see me falling apart because he wouldn't know how to deal with that. He's a sports writer, wonderful guy. And so I just sat on it. And I it kind of impacted me for many, 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 many years. I mean, on the one hand, again, it was very useful as an actor that when I would have a script that required that's when I would let it out a little bit because I could use it.
Mhm.
But otherwise, it was detrimental and it shaped my view of life in a way that maybe wasn't always helpful. So this time when my brother passed, uh, I really thought I'm gonna just experience grief. And sometimes that meant leaving the room and going to the bathroom and burying my head in a towel and just wailing, not even weeping, wailing, right? And so and sometimes I still, it comes up, and that's okay, but I realized it wasn't bottomless. That's what I used to fear, is like, if I let this out, it will never stop. But it does stop. And, you know, not drinking helped me to be able to experience my grief and not have it overcome me and not have fear of it. So and really, his passing was, I use the phrase that C.S. Lewis came up with, a severe mercy, because he was not driving when he passed out. So he didn't hurt anybody. And I was very concerned. I knew something was going to happen at some point, and I was afraid that he would be driving while it did. And so he was at home, and so he didn't hurt anybody. And so we were able to celebrate his life because it was joyful and he was a wonderful person. And so everybody was able to celebrate him. If something had happened and he had harmed somebody else or taken somebody else's life in the midst of his drinking, we would have had to had a little quiet family service and just kind of privately just be done with it. So so that was really a great thing. Um, but because I think I was sober and had committed to just experiencing life as it came, I was able to do that with him and with that grief. And it was such a gift to be able to do that. It's such a gift. And you realize these feelings that we're often trying to bury, because a lot of drinking comes from trying not to experience something.
Yes.
But we don't have to be afraid of life. We don't have to be afraid of life. Like, we can take things in and process them. Hopefully you have support. Um, but been the gift of being an actor too, where we can really, that you have to always, you're always looking at what's underneath. You're always looking at what's underneath. And alcohol usually does the opposite. You don't want to look at anything at all. So this has been really, great. I mean, it's almost, I'm using that in a way to improve my acting, but as an actor, everything contributes to it. So even when I was having my kids, I realized that opened up a chamber in my heart that only having kids, however you have them, can open. You become more vulnerable, whatever. And I thought, oh, not only is this wonderful and I love my kids, but this is really good for my acting ability.
Well, I was
Because now,
thinking yeah,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
was thinking about what you said in the very beginning about how, as an actress, being intentional and recognizing, empathy and the depth of emotion. I mean, I think that's the human experience, but it reminded me a little bit of that's the gift that coaching has given to me. And in some ways, I'm so
Mm,
grateful that I had an issue with alcohol and experienced alcohol use disorder because on the other side of that, I actually started taking a closer look at what was I drinking to solve.
mm,
What
that's
were the
right.
things I was, trying to avoid or numb or bury and one of the things that I've been very open about is my husband. We've been married 43 years, and
Oh, gosh.
when I stopped drinking, 10 years ago, I was like a crazy woman for a while. I was just a little bit too much energy for most people. And, I realized that, our communication style was bad. I thought, "Well, how did we
Mm,
get to this place?" But it was because I was great at avoiding hard conversations, or if my feelings were hurt, instead of talking about it, I would just have a glass of wine or have a drink.
yeah.
And then by the time the alcohol was out of the way and I realized, "Uh-oh, there's not a lot of great communication skills here."
Ah,
And,
right.
I got married at 22, and so,
Oh, gosh.
we had patterns that we had been practicing for a long time.
Yes.
And how freeing it was for me to be able to get to a place where I was willing to do the harder things, like going through grief, understanding that there's a beautiful gift through the experience. And I always think that when it comes to loss, I was thinking
Mm,
the other side of loss is love.
mm.
And
Yes, that's right.
so, the for all of us that when alcohol's out of the way, we get to see what really is um is going on inside. And
Yes.
knowing that I wanted to communicate and have a closer relationship with my husband
Yeah.
was a hard recognition, and I didn't know if I thought he may not stay with this crazy woman. He's got a
Right.
little too much energy, but, what happened was that we found our way back toward having more honest and open conversations, and,
Mm,
he followed me to not drinking 2 years after, so he's been alcohol-free around the same amount of time as you, and it has really changed our relationship, and I
wow.
think, we don't do a lot of the soft skills of helping people set boundaries or communicate assertively or, um, you know, learn to take a seat and listen more fully.
Uh-huh.
I was not, I was born in 1960. We didn't do that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like you said, the gift of not drinking was to really be not only healing the grief with your brother, but also recognizing the parts that you weren't able to acknowledge with your mom.
Yeah. And to just be present and not be afraid. Not be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Not be afraid of it. I really thought that with my mom, like, I just would never come out of it. Like, there would be no way to stop grieving. And, but there is. It's amazing. It's amazing that you can, with somebody like my brother, who was, very, very, very close. We were very close up until like the last 5 years when the drinking kind of made it impossible. Um, but, um, that I can think about him now and I'm okay. And I don't, necessarily burst into tears. It's more like I'm thinking, damn it, Michael, why didn't you get it together? Like I have those kind of conversations with him, and thinking about the loss and what could have been and, that kind of thing. But also, listen, I'm Catholic and I know I'm going to see him again. So there's always that. This is only temporary. It's not a permanent situation. So I have that foundation, which helps with all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, agreed. I mean, definitely for me, I remember, my husband and I used to joke that there's a line that says, "There's a fine line between Saturday night and Sunday morning." And I would be sitting in church on Sundays thinking, "I think God is disappointed in me. Like,
Mm.
why can't I get this together, with my drinking?" And, it's been such a blessing in my life to be able to now use the other side of that and feel like I have an opportunity to, give back in a way that what a gift. I mean,
Yes.
he could have done anything with my life, and when alcohol moved out of the way, he gave me this beautiful opportunity to move into coaching, and that's been huge.
Well, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this, but um, and your audience may have a wide range of opinions about this, but when October 7th happened and I saw the Hamas body cam footage, I was horrified. And I was reaching out to a lot of Jewish friends to ask them if they were okay. And they said, no. And you're the only person that's asked me. And so I just started talking with a friend of like, how can we let Jewish people know that we care? And it snowballed into this thing. And we created an organization called O7C, October 7th Coalition. And I mean, if you had asked me 2.5 years ago if I would be on the cover of the Jerusalem Post in Israel, I would said, "What are you talking about? I'm Catholic." You know? Um, but at one point, early on, after October 7th, it was early in 2024, when Columbia University students were keeping Jewish kids from going to class and all of that. Um, there was a group outside that was doing a protest about asking Hamas to release the hostages. And I was there on a ladder with a megaphone talking about releasing the hostages. And part of me was, saying, Patricia Heaton, release hostages. And the other part is just like, what am I doing on a step ladder with a megaphone in New York City outside of Columbia University? This is insane. Um, but I don't think I would have been capable of doing that if I had been drinking. And I have been asked to speak to a number of um, people all over the country in different organizations. And I don't think I could be doing it. I'm telling you, it kind of comes and flows so easily. And I think part of that is I am alcohol free and I'm very present. And you know, and so I think in part I was almost being prepared. Like that gift of having alcohol taken away was preparing me for such a time as this. Like it's so strange to me because I had been really saying to God, like, what is it that you want me to be doing after I quit drinking? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm just not sure who I am now and what I'm supposed to be doing. And then that happened, and it kind of exploded. So I think that that's also when you get out of that prison of alcohol and you're free, then you're really able to be of use in a way that you probably would have not been able to if you were drinking.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And it's powerful. Thank you for sharing that because it's so powerful to realize that um, we are not served and the world is not served and humanity is not served when we play small, when we quiet our
Mm.
voice. And sometimes alcohol for women becomes that way of, I'm not heard, I'm not powerful, I don't have agency, who am I? And, in the beautiful words of Mary Oliver, which I always butcher her quote, but,
Yeah.
we are, it is our wild and untethered ability and love that the world needs. And so, yeah, I love that so much. I'll make sure that we link that organization in the show
Okay.
as well.
Yeah.
And I will just remind my audience that we have a 20% off to try your own bottles of Solubrae. Did I say that
Hmm.
right?
Solubrae. Yeah.
Solubrae, sorry. I
Uh-huh.
didn't understand the pronunciation, so my brain is
That's
still
okay.
catching up. But
That's
Solubrae
okay.
is I think of that as that, yeah, that beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, so many gifts you've given to the world, and now we have a new one with this delicious beverage. And thank you for the gift of being here and sharing your story and your tender moments that you've been through with my listeners.
Well, thanks, Terry. And I have to say, I've gotten a lot from you to think about and some new tools, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, you too.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.